So delegates are at the Constitutional Convention and they're rewriting the Constitution. So far, they've decided that they're going to have three branches of government and they're going to balance the power between the state and federal governments. They've also decided on the Great Compromise. So with the Great Compromise, remember it was the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan, and they compromised to use both plans, creating a House of Representatives, which is based on population, and which is the Virginia plan, and then a Senate, which is based on equal number of votes per state, which is the New Jersey plan. So now that they've made that decision and then they've created Congress, now they have to decide what to do about slavery. And slavery has been a hot topic at this point. Other nations in the world that have had slavery, and we'll talk more about the background of slavery, but they're starting to get rid of slavery. They're starting to abolish it. So there's a lot of pressure from the United States, especially when writing a new constitution, to finally make a decision about slavery. Unfortunately, the delegates aren't ready to go there yet. There are a lot of deep issues besides the moral obligation of getting rid of slavery. There were a lot of financial and economic concerns as well. So they decided just to delay that for 20 years. So they said that 20 years they would for at least 20 years they would continue to allow slavery, and in 20 years they would either reconvene or they would then be able to make a decision one way or the other about slavery, which, as we know later on, they were not able to come to any kind of decision, and eventually leads to the Civil War. But now that they are going, since they made this decision that they are going to allow slavery, they need to decide, do slaves count towards population? So there was a great debate. So if slaves do count towards population, then the more slaves you have, then the more people you have, and the more people you have, the more members in the House of Representatives you have, which means you have more power in that chamber of Congress. So slave states would actually have more power. So you're taking a state that has a lot of slaves and giving them more power, which for a lot of states that were maybe anti-slavery or did not have a lot of slaves, they were very nervous about this. But slave states also, the more population you have, the more taxes you pay towards federal taxes. You had so much that you had to pay per person that lived in your state towards taxes. So they compromised and they said that every slave would count as 3/5 of a person. So if you count, each slave as 3/5, and you draw stick figures out and put 3/5 beside each one and then add the 3/5 up. So for every 5 slaves, only 3 counted. So not only was this a way for them to kind of balance the population factor out, so if you did have slaves in your state, then you still got more population, you still got more representatives in the House of Representatives for that chamber of Congress, but it was not as many as if you would have counted every slave as one person. But it did another thing too. It actually showed the people in the United States that slaves were not a whole person. I mean, imagine, now granted, we've been going through slavery all of this time, and there's no denying the fact that slaves were mistreated in horrible, horrible conditions. But now they're making a law that says you're not a whole person. You're only 3/5 of a person. That impact is very, very powerful, even besides the impact of it affecting laws and how laws are made and population and all of that. Just the impact of someone officially saying, as a government, you are not a whole person. You are less than a whole person. And I think that compromise alone helps lead to a lot of the dissolvement between the races within the United States, and would lead to further issues later on, as we know, as we get closer to the Civil War.